bitches, it's Kelsey. Welcome to my least favorite books of 2018. Now, before we begin, this list is a mess. It goes really from books I really didn't like to books that I was expecting something from and they really disappointed me. We'll get into it. This isn't tea, it's water. I feel like I should say that so you guys know that I'm not being salty. Coming in at number 15 we have Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. This is basically a Buddhism, Indian mythology retelling, I guess. Honestly, I don't really know what this book is about because I gave it 1 star. I really didn't like it. I think there were a lot of things that were kind of boring me within the novel. Like, yeah, it brings forward this idea of like profoundness and finding your space in the world and religion and blah blah blah. It's still a story about like Indian and Asian mythology written through a German Swiss poet's perspective, and it feels really off to me, and you can tell that it wasn't written by someone of that religion. It just felt boring and it was tiring, and I read it a couple of years ago when I was in my first years of CEGEP, which is like pre-university here in Quebec, and I didn't like it. And then I was like, maybe I'll reread it as like a 26-year-old who's profound and knows a lot about the world, and it was still boring to me. So that's why it's not, I didn't expect anything from it, so that's why it's so low on this disappointing reads list. Coming in at number 14 we have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I actually read this on audio this year for just for fun, because I heard like so many people praise this novel and I never saw any of the movies or any of the adaptations. I watched the Lizzie Bennet Diaries on YouTube and only half of it because I was like,
I'm gonna read the book because I don't want to be spoiled.
Even though this story is like 200 years old and I know how it ends. But I ended up really not enjoying it. I gave it 2 stars. I didn't think there was anything inherently bad in the novel. I just thought it was boring, and just my luck, if you watch my TBR for next month, I have to reread this. I decided to get myself like a pretty cover, which is why I have these vintage classics editions, because I have to reread it, and I'm thinking not going the audio route and really just immersing myself in this world and probably reading the introduction just so like I can understand why this novel means so much to people, and maybe by physically reading it I'll have no choice but to love these characters. That's what I'm hoping. Will it happen? We don't know. We'll see. Number 13 on this list is The Sculptor by Scott McCloud. This is a graphic novel about a man in his like early 20s, and he's a brilliant sculptor, but he wants to be more. Like, he wants to be well respected in the artisanal sphere, and he's not getting it, and so then suddenly he gets these powers and he's so amazing. I don't know. Like, I'll be honest, I think Scott McCloud is a very talented artist. I think in terms of graphic novels, he's really good. In fact, I rated one of his books, Understanding Comics, where he talks about, it's like a graphic novel about the creation of graphic novels. It's very meta, and I gave that 5 stars. I really enjoyed that. This one was a bit, I think he handled the problem of art versus artist pretty well. I mean, I write and I'm constantly conflicted with my own writing and not enjoying my own writing, and so I can understand that aspect of the main character really not finding himself in his art. But at the same time, I think this is the only thing McCloud got right in the novel. The plot of the novel was like really mediocre, and like Meg, which is the love interest, was like definitely a prime example of like manic pixie dream girl. Like, oh my god, she's so like cool, and like she would never love me, but she wants to have sex with me all the time, but she still loves her boyfriend, and I'm so depressed, and blah 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 blah. And I think in the end this was simply like a sad story about a sad man and he's being like lifted by a woman, and it's kind of like the idea of like losing her and losing like the one thing that makes his life meaningful. And it's like, you know what, just watch 5 days of summer, 50 days of summer, 500 days of summer. They dated that long? Interesting. Number 12 on this list is True History of the Kelly Gang by Peter Carey. This is basically a book I read for my Australian literature class last semester. It's about this man named Peter or Ned Kelly, and it's told through Ned Kelly's perspective, and it's an epistolary novel written to his daughter about his life. And the thing is, this is fictionalized because Peter Carey never actually had a daughter, but a lot of the things that happen in this novel did happen to the historical figure of Ned Kelly, but this is fictionalized. And it was just really boring. The writing style of this novel was like so weird. I really couldn't get into it. It's really written in the way that he would speak. And he says it in the beginning that he doesn't know how to write. Like, this story wasn't that interesting, and it literally made me fall asleep sometimes. It's just about a man and his gang. It was just so boring. Ned had to be the worst character to follow. He's annoying, he's mean, he's rude, he's selfish, he only cares about himself and I guess this fictionalized daughter. But it was just like, I just really didn't like it, okay? And if that at all sounds interesting to you, maybe you would like it, but if I didn't have to read this for class and write like 3 fucking essays on it, I wouldn't have read it. It was just so boring. So I can't wait to get rid of this. In the number 11 spot, we have Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Now, if you watched my Spookathon vlog, you know that I had semi-high expectations for this. Because, you know what, I think it is that I think I like classics, but then I read classics of this time, I think in particular, like 18th, 19th century, and I don't like them. It's the one and only Digo Double G. Same with like Pride and Prejudice. I think there's so much expectation on these novels that when I pick them up, I have like such high expectations and they really let me down. But basically, this is the story of a man who goes to Wuthering Heights and he learns the story of, Catherine and Heathcliff and their tragic love story, which isn't even really a love story. It was, the two main protagonists, Catherine and Heathcliff, are absolutely fucking insufferable. I cannot stand them. The purpose of this novel was to have unlikable characters, and it was to have a love story between two characters who don't belong in society getting together. Like, and usually I love a good angsty romance between a man who's so angsty and but so in love with this girl, but like he can't tell her, and like, oh, he's so mean and blah blah blah. Like, that's the shit I fucking love. But for some reason in this goddamn book I could not stand Heathcliff. And another thing that I think disappointed me is that this novel is also like, I don't know, I had this perceived notion that Wuthering Heights was fucking scary, and like while there was like a creepy moment of Catherine like in the window in the first like 20 pages of the novel, like that was it, folks, and I really didn't enjoy this. I'm wondering if maybe I should reread it, but like I don't think I'm gonna like it. I just think this book was just not for me. It was just not for me, and I have to let it go. Coming in at the number 10 spot, we have Everybody's Bae, You by Caroline Kepnes. So if you and your mother haven't watched the Netflix adaptation yet, let me tell you what this book is about. Basically, it's about this guy named Joe, and he works at a bookstore, and this wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous girl named Beck comes in, and guess what? Beck reads. Oh my god. And Joe is infatuated by this girl who can read a book, and he stalks her and basically enters her life in all aspects, and ruins her life in all aspects. And that's all I'm gonna say, because this is probably the most hyped book of 2018. It truly let me down, folks. It really did. Everybody was giving this book fucking 5 stars. If I looked up this review, there's so many 5 stars. I was like, this book is gonna fuck me up. And it didn't. And you know what's fucked up? Is that I think Joe could have been so much worse, and he really let me down. He was creepy, yes, but I was expecting him to be 20 times creepier by the way people were describing him. Like, yes, he's a sick character, but like, by the way people were describing him, I thought he was gonna be like so much worse. Like, the novel did keep me engaged and kept me reading because it was very fast paced, but I think my expectations for you were just so incredibly high that nothing could have reached them. I put this book on such a high pedestal and I was expecting like something so much better than that. I was expecting it to be creepier, I was expecting it to be more fucked up, and it just didn't deliver. So you know what? It didn't deliver on my own fucking creepy expectations. In the number 9 spot, we actually have probably one of the most terrible books I've ever read. It's The Merciless by Daniel Vega. I bought this book purely for the cover. It's a fucking hot pink cover and it has a goddamn Satan star in the middle, and I was fucking shook. I'm like, I need this book. It looks amazing. And it wasn't. So there's these girls and the, I guess, leader of the clique, and she's like, yo, one of our friends has a demon inside her. We need to perform an exorcism. And then throughout the book you're like, but is this girl just fucked up or is there actually an exorcism? And I'm not gonna spoil it because maybe like you want to read this for the cover, but like I would not recommend. This book fucking sucks. It wasn't at all what I was expecting. The writing in this novel is like so immature. It felt rushed. The plot jumped around like super quickly. It fucking dragged in other moments. And like there was this twist at the end, and I think this is what pissed me off the most because it didn't fucking make sense. Like, I can't explain the twist without spoiling the novel, but it was like probably one of the worst twists I ever fucking read. I was expecting it. It was just fucking boring. It sucked. I wish I could erase this book from my brain because it was so boring and bad and poorly written, and it's like, I'm tired. I'm tired of talking about it. Coming in at the number 8 spot, we probably have one of the most disappointing reads of this year. We have The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks. This book, I really like the Shannara Chronicles TV show. I'm like obsessed with it. And I knew that the first book in the Shannara like trilogy books isn't of the show. So I was going in expecting that, but I was going in expecting something good, and what I got was basically like Lord of the Rings times 5,000. And I love Lord of the Rings. This was like a worse Lord of the Rings. It just lagged and lagged and lagged and lagged. I was incredibly distracted while reading this, bored half the fucking time. And I can understand being inspired by Tolkien's work and wanting to create a world that is so like heavily regarded like Tolkien, but I was just freaking yawning the whole time. Like, I never yawned once in Lord of the Rings. I yawned so much in this book. And I just kept feeling like I had read this story before, and I did in Lord of the Rings. I also got the annotated edition because I really thought that I was gonna like this book. Oh my god. And the annotations served as like nothing. Like, they really weren't interesting. I guess if you've read this novel before and you're fucking obsessed with it, the annotations would be helpful, but they were not for me. There were some parts in this novel, like literally 100 pages of this novel could have been missing and I wouldn't even have noticed. Like, I wouldn't even have cared, I don't think. And I guess the ending kind of redeemed it, like where they got the sword. But I'm just excited to read the next one because the next one follows Will Ormsford, which is the son of the guy in this, or the grandson? Oh my god, I don't even remember. He's like a descendant. Yes, I'm recording.
And I'm leaving.
So yeah, the next one follows Will Ormsford, which is the only reason I fucking bought this series, so we'll see. Coming in at the number 7 spot, this one like makes me genuinely really sad. It's Solitaire by Alice Oseman. This is about like a girl who deals with this kind of like pranking group called Solitaire, but also this boy named Michael Holden, and it's kind of like finding herself before college, I guess. So although this was a quick read and I did enjoy it to a certain extent, I did have a lot of problems with it. First of all, I was really annoyed with our main character, but you know what? I was more annoyed with the fact that she is so clearly depressed and nobody in this novel takes that into consideration. Her parents and friends are like absolute garbage, and she only really had 2 people in her life who really cared about her, which is like her brother, 3 people I guess, her brother and her brother's boyfriend, which are the 2 in Heartstopper, by the way, and Michael Holden, I guess. And this was so similar to A Catcher in the Rye, which is like one of my least favorite books. I think like that was another reason. It's so like angsty and like depressing, and it just isn't for me. It was a mindless beach read that I brought to Punta Cana, and that's all this will be for me. Next we have Bird by Anne Lamott. This is a book, anecdotes from her life, but also like a book on writing. And I really don't have anything to say. This was like super disappointed because it is on all kinds of lists about like writing books. 9 out of 10 of those lists will include this book. Like, this is so highly regarded in the writing world. Perhaps it is my fault for placing such high expectations on this novel. That seems to be like my fault with all of these books. But you know what? If it's gonna be on 9 out of 10 fucking lists, it better fucking be good. Like, I really didn't get anything from this novel that isn't different from any other generic book on writing. Like, I don't understand why this is so highly regarded. Like, there isn't any new quotes in here, any new points presented that isn't different from any other book. And basically, like, I'm going in circles here, but I was just expecting so much from this novel and it really did not deliver. And that's why it's on my least favorite books. Sorry. Next we have A Wild Sheep Chase by Haruki Murakami. This is a novel about a man who finds a picture of a sheep with a star on his back, and this sheep is very important to like important people in Japan, and he goes on this wild goose chase to look for this sheep for these important people who apparently can't find the sheep on their own, and only he can find this sheep because like his friend found this sheep or owns this sheep or something with this sheep. This book, okay, Haruki Murakami is one of my favorite authors, and I will always say this, and I think that's why this book is so like disappointing to me. I was looking forward to this book because I thought it was like completely different from what this book is. I thought this novel was going to be like a crime novel. Like, I knew about the sheep, but I thought it was going to be something more. And this was just so weird. Like, Murakami's books are all weird. They all deal with this like magical realism, like transcending realms and like going over like patches of time, and they're all like that. But this book was just, this just surpassed it. This was so weird. And it's like, I have nothing else to say other than the fact that I'm disappointed that Murakami wrote this, and I'm disappointed that I myself didn't like it. Because I don't know, I think it was just too weird for me. Like, I'm so used to Murakami, and this is like so outside my comfort level with him. And I read 1Q84. Next we have History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. I didn't give this book a bad rating by any means. I gave it 3 stars, which is like the highest so far, I think. Yes, the highest so far out of all the books. Anyway, basically this is a book about Griffin dealing with the death of his ex-boyfriend Theo, finding comfort in Jackson, who is Theo's boyfriend at the time of death. So they're basically both grieving over this person that they love. And I thought that this was gonna be such a beautiful book and such a beautiful look at understanding grief. And it ain't that, sis. It ain't that. The plot was so like underdeveloped. I hated all the fucking characters except one who is, I can't even say his name because he's the twist at the end. So one character is this pure little being who is being used by Griffin, and I hate him. I hate Griffin. Oh my god. Every character besides that pure little special being are selfish, they're annoying, they're nothing but their relationship. In a way, like, these characters are nothing but relationships to one another. In the end, like, I kind of enjoyed how the story ended, because I do think like Griffin grew somewhat, and so did Jackson, and so did that pure special little being. So I guess the ending really saved the novel for me. It was a good time. I enjoyed reading this. This was also a book I brought to Punta Cana. Maybe I just shouldn't read in Punta Cana from the looks of it, but it was nothing more than that, and it didn't present anything like special. And especially after reading More Happy Than Not, which is so far my favorite Adam Silvera book, this was a letdown. Next, we have a book that I've only seen on people's best lists, and it is on my least favorite list. It's A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I just read this in November, and okay, this is basically, it's an accumulation story of a bunch of people's lives. So it follows Willem, JB, Malcolm and Jude St. Francis, yeah. Sorry, my camera overheated, so if I'm in a different position, that's why. But basically, I was talking about how I felt like some of the scenes in this novel weren't unnecessary, and I just feel like a lot of this novel, it's a huge fucking novel, I feel like a lot of this novel, like, could have been condensed. I have a lot of problems with the implausibility of this book. Like, I think that in this novel, characters were either good or they were bad, and there was no characters that were, like, in the middle. Like, everybody was either an angel or a fucking demon, and it just really bothered me that there was no discussion on like just a normal person. Like, it was just a duality of human beings within this novel, and I just really didn't like it. But I see this novel being meaningful to other people. It just wasn't for me, and that's why this is going to my friend Stephanie, because I know that she will like this book. Coming in at the number 2 spot, oh my god, we are almost at the end, thank god. We have The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This is a novel about Charlie entering high school. I'm gonna preface this by saying I definitely think Chbosky is a talented writer. It is by no means a horribly written book at all. And I do believe he is able to craft a story that millions of people can identify with, but I just don't think I'm one of those millions of people. I think Charlie's voice in this novel was extremely fucking juvenile. I understand that this character is meant to like explain things to his friend within these letters, and I feel like doing the things that he did within this novel and having the friends that he had and living the life that he did, he wouldn't have such a juvenile voice. This novel does have like a hopeful ending, and it was really nice to watch these characters grow over 200 pages, but I think I was just expecting a more impactful reaction from the twist at the end of this novel and from the novel itself, and watching these characters grow and watching these characters like become friends, but I just didn't. I think the movie did it better in this case. Sorry. And now, number 1, my least favorite fucking book of 2018 was Invisible Monsters by Chuck Palahniuk. Oh my god. Okay, so this is basically a novel about a girl who, she's the most beautiful girl ever, and then one day she shoots off half her face, so she becomes like one of the ugliest girls ever, and she becomes friends with this like drag queen, and they learn to accept themselves and like to love themselves for who they are. And Chuck Palahniuk, he always writes like these really like meta novel, not meta, but he really writes these like meaningful novels that like talk about society. And this was like a really hard reading to accept, because like when I was like an emo 15-year-old, I loved Chuck Palahniuk. I think that if I were 15 and I would have read this novel, I probably would have enjoyed it more. But I think I just don't get Palahniuk anymore. I didn't find anything incredibly captivating about this plot. Like, all the twists were so overdone. It's like Palahniuk was like, are you comfortable here? Here's a twist. Wait, and then here's another twist, and then here's another twist, and then here's another twist. And it was like, when will these twists end? What's that over there? Another twist. It was just so unbelievable, and like, it truly felt like Palahniuk just wanted to shock his readers, and he didn't actually want to present something of value. And the writing was really pushing me over the edge. It was really pushing these ideas in my head, and it's like, do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? This is what's happening. Do you get it? And like, I understand that the point of the novel is it surrounds like beauty and attention, but it was so like heavily pushed down my throat that I got tired of it. And there was no real substantial commentary that came out of that, and the novel, to me, was simply tasteless. On that note, we will end here because my camera is overheating. I'm losing memory. Why are you barking? And that's it, so we'll end here. Give this a like, give this a dislike, comment down below, let me know what books you fucking hated this year, and I will see you next time. Bye!